Hey, what's up guys, Jeremy here. In this video, let's explore more options of the curve follow project. Let's get started. As I mentioned in a previous video, the curve follow project is a relatively complex and flexible tool. Therefore, there's a lot of options that are kind of hidden all over the place. So in this video, I will show you a bit more of the stuff that I think is useful and I personally use on a regular basis, so you should too. So we start with the same exact example we had in the previous video, but this time I want to bring the path 3-axis GCT for junction. So if I make this one visible, sometimes when you have a path, you will have something like this. A path that is not exactly joined together, like there is some space here. It's still the path, it's still doing what you, or covering the section you would like to cover, but there are some gaps in it. So if it's the case, you can go to, let's say, I'm going to copy the 3-axis path here, Control V. By the way, when you copy, make sure to reselect the station, otherwise you will have potentially some weird behaviors. I will call it axis, then underscore GCT for junction. I will select this here. I will select curve, reset selection, and now I want to select this curve here. So reverse direction, let's say, and auto select all. Click done. The gaps were not big enough for you to select not to work. Here you can see that now we have approach and retract motion all over the place. In fact, every time the path is disjointed, there's an approach and retract motion that was created. Remember when we were creating, or we were working on the other example with just the flat part and the Motoman, when we have those two lines straight and we unselected the approach and retract each curve, it removed the approach and retract between the two curves. So we just had a line. So what we could do to fix that here would be to simply select the approach and retract each curve here. But that's not really fixing the issue. It's just kind of removing the symptom, if I can say, instead of healing the sickness. There's an option here that we didn't talk about, which is curve follow, or joint curve tolerance. Joint curve tolerance is, as it says, a kind of a threshold of how far can two curves be, or can the end point of one curve and the start point of the other curve be, for RoboDK to still consider that it's just one curve. So by default, you have a threshold of just 0.5 millimeters. So if two lines are 0.5 millimeters apart or less, RoboDK will consider that it's just one line and it won't add an approach and a retract motion. But here in this case, if I go for 5 millimeters, let's say, it will simply bridge the gap between those curves here and not add a approach and retract motion. This is a better option than this one here, because this is very useful if you have many paths that are, let's say, at different spot. Let's say that we had another path here in the middle. Instead of having to recreate a new curve follow project, we could have just selected this path here, select the other path here, and then keep the approach and retract between each curve, so that we would have retracted at the end of the one curve and then approach the other one. But if we just remove that, it would have created a straight line between those two curves, potentially creating a crash with the part here. So I prefer kind of really addressing the problem at its root, and it's the fact that the paths here are disjointed, and I would like for RoboDK to consider that even if the gap is 5 millimeters or less, it's still just one specific curve. Okay, so I don't know what I hit. Okay, here, sorry. Okay, great. So I don't know what I did here. I'm just going to copy that and paste that here. Why absolute? Oh yeah, it's this one here that I missed. Okay, perfect. Sorry. So just like that here, I have my toolpath. I'm doing some stuff sometimes that I don't necessarily understand right away. I'm a user too. So just like that, I have my 3 paths. I can update those and create a main program where I follow all those paths one after the other. So that's the first section, the first part I wanted to talk about. There's another thing that is very important. So, you know, when we create a new curve follow project, there's always a bunch of informations that are kind of pre-written or default values. So that's cool, but if those default values are not what you want and you're always kind of creating the same exact path or same exact kind of pattern on different parts all the time, or if your user, like if you're setting RoboDK as an interface for the user to create its own paths, what you can do is go to Tools and then Options. Under CAM, here, most of this section here are the default parameters that you want to have. So let's say that instead of running at 50 millimeters per second, you would always want it to run at 100. If you want to, let's say, use always tool orientation follows paths instead of the minimum tool orientation change. If you would like to always have a specific init here, it's always like init, and it's always here gun start, and it's always here gun end, and that will most likely never change, and it's always here 100 because you don't want the user to mistakenly start at a meter per second. And you click OK. Now if I create a new curve follow project, it's 100 here. The param event already has the init, the gun start, the gun stop, the gun end, the 100 here. It's already a tool orientation follows path. So all of those default parameters are already set up properly in your curve follow project as soon as you open it. So you're kind of saving some time if you're doing always the same thing, or simplifying the process for the end user if the end user is not necessarily as used to RoboDK as maybe you are. So that's pretty much everything for this video and this module. In the next module, I will show you how to import, extract, create the paths that we use, because for this one, it was kind of easy on that part. I kind of skipped one step. The paths were already imported in RoboDK. But in the next one, I'm going to show you how to do that first step and how to do it properly so that it's a smooth sailing for the curve follow project. I hope to see you there. And in any case, have a great day, guys.